Welcome to the Most Excellent 80s Movies podcast. It's the podcast where a filmmaker, a comedian, and their fabulous guests bazooka and bazooka and bazooka explode their way through the 80s movies we think we love or might have missed, with these our modern eyes to see how they hold up in today's world. And today we are talking about The Delta Force, a movie selection from 1986.
This is a hijack! Hands down! This is a hand grenade! Hands down!
The enemy doesn't care who they hurt. Not how young. How innocent. How helpless.
I'm gone. Collect all passports.
Why?
Do it!
Strangers,
You're making a mistake.
united by the threat of death,
There's only two of them! And there's so many of us!
find the courage
You take one of us, you gotta take us all.
to defy their captors.
I won't do it!
It's a new age of terror that requires a new breed of warrior.
1 minute to showtime.
We're members of Delta Force, and we're here to take you home.
America's elite anti-terrorist commandos, committed to destroy the enemies of freedom, because the stakes are more than pride,
Sleep tight, sucker.
more than honor, more than justice.
American, I want to negotiate. Do you hear me, American?
Loud and clear.
Because they're fighting to save American lives. The Delta Force, starring Chuck Norris and Lee Marvin. America's new heroes. The Delta Force.
I think it is somewhat hilarious to refer to them as America's new heroes when they're both like in their 70s or something.
Yeah, I think Chuck Norris is 46 in this movie.
Lee Marvin is like 100.
This was Lee Marvin's last film.
Oh, poor guy.
He died right after. He got, I think it was like an inflamed colon or something like that.
Oh. Well, that voice you're hearing is, of course, filmmaker Nathan Blackwell of Squishy Studios.
Hi there. It's always strange to be introduced.
Introduced.
Yeah,
Well, it's been like 70 times now.
that's all right. And then that voice you hear is Krissy Lenz, improviser of the National, the Neighborhood Comedy Theater. Sorry, it's my first episode.
And we do have a fabulous guest today, improviser Rick Larsen.
Hello. Oh, I was hoping that I wasn't muted, and it turns out that I'm not, which is great.
Improv.
Well, finding the tab
Yeah.
that I was in, so I was looking to make sure I had my notes. Yeah.
Oh, I took so many notes. I think this is maybe this.
It's such a note movie.
I stopped at some point, but I will say that I did write in all caps with 3 exclamation points, Lee Marvin's eyebrows.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we never share really the notes, and sometimes it just, the podcast just goes off the rails. But what are your strangest notes right now? Just kind of.
Let's take a look here.
I've got fart missile.
I said that too. I think I said butt rocket, but
Yeah, butt rocket.
butt rocket.
Okay.
something like that. I did note that in the airport, the terrorists all had cool matching beige suits. Like Robert Forrester was the best dressed terrorist, I think.
Yeah, he won that award.
Yeah.
I have American issued Budweisers.
Oh yes, that was great.
Yes.
So many pilots. Another exclamation point one.
In quotes, damn it, let's not screw this one up.
Double bazooka bros.
Yes.
And then they just set them down and walk away.
Oh man, so
Here.
how can a movie this like over the top and outlandish be this like slow?
Well, yes, and B, so like the whole this movie is 2 hours and 5 minutes long, and it could have easily been 45 minutes if we didn't need the whole beginning part of all the like geopolitical where like it seems like they're really trying to like actually send a
Really
message.
swing for the fences. Yeah. So is this our first canon film of canon films?
No, it's not. We did something
can't
else
be.
from Canon Films, but I
That's
was
right.
hoping
We probably saw like one of their like canon films. I'm so glad to finally get to them. They've done straight to video stuff kind of in the same zone, maybe even a bit more like explosive than like Roger Corman, but like stuff with ninjas, like like a kickboxer missing in action. They're very kind of straight to video action genre, but they occasionally did a couple of ones that they tried to punch above their weight with like over the top and like Masters of the Universe, but such a fascinating collection of films they made.
so this is a Canon movie, but there's a lot of stars in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of 70s stars for what is a late 80s movie.
It first starts off as almost like one of those like disaster movies, with like George Kennedy and Shelley Winters and like Robert Vaughn and it seems like it's gonna be like one of those like Towering Inferno Poseidon adventure movies.
Yep. That's exactly the feel that you get at the beginning, especially as we're like beating everyone on the plane. You got Shelley Winters and their couple friends, and they're like shopping and getting to know each other, and they're like, it's our silver anniversary, which really made me like look hard in the mirror because I was like, it's their silver anniversary. I'm 2 years away from my silver anniversary, and I was like, ooh, is that how I seem? Is that how old I am? But like, you're getting to know all these people who are on the plane. There's George Kennedy and a pair of nuns, and you see that terrorism is happening. Cool. So far, I'm still on board. It's just that everything from the moment that they're like, this is a hijack, and hit every flight attendant in the face with a gun as they walk down the line, everything after that until Chuck Norris shoots the first bazooka is so confusing, geopolitical nightmare.
They're so ambitious. Mm-hmm. They want to be 3 movies at once.
Yeah, it struck me as really kind of a like one of those Law and Order episodes that's taken from today's headline,
like ripped from the headlines.
Yeah. Very, but then they changed just enough.
Right, they changed TWA, so this is like based off of like the 1985 TWA hijacking to ATW.
Yes, which I didn't write it in my notes, but every time that showed up on the screen, I would yell, "All the way!" All the way. It was something else, but it will always be all the way to me.
But basically, this is like a like the quick like cheat sheet version of this movie of what the Delta Force is it's basically like the TWA hijacking, but the Americans win and blow shit up. Like it is the what's another critic called the fairy tale reaction to a real life hostage situation.
Yeah, right. And you can like feel the moment in the movie when it makes that switch, because I was reading a lot of the trivia during some of the slower moments, and it was very much like, this is based on a real person, and this part really happened, except during the daytime instead of at night. And then just all of a sudden they pull out all their toys, and it's just the G.I. Joe cartoon.
Yeah, and then it becomes like there was a brief period in time where dune buggies as a military vehicle was like the peak, the pinnacle of like action adventure movies. And then you would just like, so what can you fit on a dune buggy? You can get how many rocket launchers, and then how many guns, and can we get one that shoots backwards, you know.
Well, it seemed like it was going to be silly at the beginning because the terrorists don't seem they seem inept. They seem like they are fools and don't know what they're doing. Like at one point, he accidentally pulls the pin out of the grenade because he gets hit in the face with the door when he he forces the pilot to open the door and it hits him in the face and he like, oopsie, drops the pin. Then he picks up the pin and puts it in his mouth and he's talking to the pilots with the pin in his mouth. And he's like, "You gotta take me to Lebanon." And they're like, "We can't understand you." And he's like, "Well, I've got the pin in my mouth. You take it out of my mouth and stick it back in the grenade. Now take me to Beirut." Like, they seemed silly. And at the beginning, there's only 2 of them. And it definitely seemed like we should have all listened to Shelley Winters when she was like, "There's a million of us and 2 of them. Why are we not standing up?" Because, like, it gets creepy when they start, like, asking to separate the Jews.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what there's a lot of things that they just directly stole from the TWA the hostage situation, where which is that, you know, them separating the Jewish prisoners, like the Navy diver who gets killed, you know, that they just directly lifted from the actual events.
Well, and it did seem like when we were first meeting all of the people on the plane, I thought that the 3 Navy boys were like a throuple who had just gotten back from their like mini moon, because they all had a very like sexy gay energy. But then it was sad when the one died and there was just the other 2 people of the couple left. But yeah, they're like separating the Jews, and they ask this poor German flight attendant to like pick out the names that seem Jewish.
Yeah, which is genuinely dramatic, and which upsets me that they just 100% lifted what actually happened in real life.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem right to do that in a movie where later Chuck Norris is going to shoot bazookas out of his ass.
Right, and especially like this happened so close to the actual events that the actual events were actually happening when they were writing the script.
Oh,
and they sent apparently so Menahem Golan is the director, but he's also one of the owners of the entire company. So it's like the owner of the company is like, "No, I shall direct this movie." And he directed like a number of movies like Over the Top and things like that, just stuff with no subtlety and all enthusiasm. But he sent like his assistant director to like smuggle him across the border to like be near where the actual events were happening so that they could write their ending.
Wow. Boo, I say.
Is it fair to jump all the way to that ending?
Please, we can jump anywhere we want to.
Let's fire over there like a rocket.
The climactic fight scene between Chuck Norris and Robert Forster was such a fantasy fulfillment for, like, I'm guessing American dads, because Norris with his mullet busts in and they fight, but they don't really fight. Chuck Norris just wails on him for 5 solid minutes. It's never at any point is Chuck Norris in danger. And the guy has like, he's won. He's got the guy defeated, and he's still like, I want to punch him a couple more times.
Well, it's you don't like realize this stuff as a kid, and and this is the first time I've seen Delta Force, but like there's so many other movies like this, but during this kind of, you didn't realize that there's like this Reagan era, like, no, let's just shoot the criminals in the street. I mean, that feels so great. And there's stuff like Death Wish and like Dirty Harry. There was like so much of that just flew over my head when I was younger, or until just I've like revisited these things.
Yeah, you mentioning the Reagan era brings up another point for me. Was at multiple points, because there's like the failed mission at the beginning where the helicopter's on fire and he saves his friend.
Right.
And they start talking about like the president and the brass and all these no names are mentioned. We don't know who the president is, but it's very down on like for such a rah-rah America movie, it's very like, oh, but our leadership is all terrible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, like, this was Chuck Norris's guy was the president at the time. So it's kind of an odd choice.
Yeah, and in Robert Vaughn's like cameo as the classic bureaucrat guy, it's like, well, we're gonna try to negotiate them with him first, and then you just get a sense that Lee Marvin and Chuck Norris are like, ugh, give me a break.
Yeah. But they do, like, there's all of these, like, stops and starts, which is what makes this movie, like, at the beginning feel like it's going to be more realistic, because it's like, okay, we're going to go here and we're going to stop them here. Okay, big plan. Everybody in your, what did you guys call them? Go-karts? Whatever.
Yeah, dune buggies.
Everybody in your dune buggies, and some of you be in costume and in character, and some of you be, just regular Delta Force guys, and we'll jog over, and then Lee Marvin gets the like word that there's now more hostages, because they allowed them to like bring 10 times as many hostages on board the second time they land. And he's like, he just rolls out onto the field in his dune buggy, and he's like, wee woo. Nope, call it off, gang. Call it off.
Yeah, and it's kind of like unintentional subtlety there, because the whole like implication the first time is like, we're here just to kick ass constantly, and it's these bureaucrats that are holding us back. But then that time it was the bureaucrats who wanted them to go in, and they were wrong. And actually, the reason that like the helicopter was on fire at the time was they warned the bureaucrats that it was too dangerous to go at night. But
right.
The bureaucrats were like, no, we want you to do.
And Chuck Norris retired and went to live on a horse farm.
In as I wrote in my notes, his mullet and his Canadian tuxedo.
And he's like, but they knew he would show up. And even though he like, this is, I never understand how things work in the military, but he had retired, but then he just showed up without doing any paperwork and got promoted.
But he had a letter from the president commanding him to come back that he crumpled up and just threw in his truck. Like, I don't care about president letters.
I totally missed that. I did not see that.
Yeah. Yeah, if 80s movies is what you based like how the military works, or how like the police department detectives work, like we had to retrain ourselves, in the 90s and the 2000s, because you can just quit whenever you wanted, and it's like, like there weren't a thing called orders. I guess there were suggestions, and like, like everyone could like interrogate people. Like it was just so cowboy.
And I honestly never understand like even with like the new Top Gun movie, like what anybody's rank is, and they're like, no, you're not captain, you're major. I'm like, isn't that worse? I don't understand. But and then there's all the stuff that again felt very silly, with the stuff with the cars on the runway when they do get to Beirut, and they're like, nope, we parked every car on the runway. Sorry, bro, you can't come here. And then they're like, they play chicken kind of, and they're like, well, we're going to land anyway, so you might want to move those cars. And they're like, okay, you have permission, move the cars.
Just a lot of extra steps.
Which seemed so silly and crazy. Okay, but and then there's a funeral at some point, and you have to explain to me what's going on with the whole priest guy and the funeral, because that's in even another country, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the priest was Israeli intelligence, and he was spying and sending information to the good guys.
I did. All I saw was that he was Greek Orthodox. And I even was reading up on him, because he did seem to come out of nowhere, and he had kind of like a sinister look, because like the whole time when they were boarding the plane, all all the Westerners were very smiley and cheerful, and these two terrorists were just scowling nonstop. And there was the music that gave it away as well, but it was very, very obvious what was going to happen. My thought on it, there were a couple points I will admit where I got kind of lost. And that was one of them. I think he just had a church that was next to their hideout, so he could see them like coming and going.
Oh, and then he was working with, because at one point he's like in his little priest box singing, and he's sending like a code over a CB radio, and the main bad guy comes in and is like, "You scamp."
I also know pig Latin. That's what he said. I can tell what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you guys, but in the version I was watching, there was whole scenes where people were talking in different languages where there was no subtitles.
I had the same. Yeah.
Yes, me too.
And that was one of them where he was like explaining to the priest that he was like catching the priest in the act.
Well, there's a lot of just, we talk about this movie has like extra steps. So like one of the interesting, so this isn't just pro-American. Once there's some things start to click in when you realize like the point of view of the director or the whole production is that the director and the producer, the same guy, he's strongly American, but he's Israeli.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has a very also strong point of view of kind of the Americans constantly cooperating or acknowledging the Israelis in the whole plot. And so they're given a lot of extra things to do, not just like this isn't just the like the Jewish point of view, which humanizes the hostages, of like being singled out, kind of like the Holocaust. They make a direct reference to that, with the guy's, the numbers on his arms.
Yeah, was that Joey Bishop that had the numbers on his arms, or was that the? Because Joey Bishop was one of them, and I'm drawing a blank on his name, but I do know that he was in Catch-22, and it'll come to me in a second.
Yeah. I forget that actor's name, but yeah, he's always good. But then also they give like the Israeli the Mossad, the Israeli intelligence, all these extra steps in the plot, which probably could have been pulled out, to kind of simplify. There's even like a line in the movie where Chuck Norris is kind of like, the Americans are acknowledging how well the Israelis have helped them. It's like, okay, kind of like when they're getting ready to go out on the siege, it's like, well, you guys have already done this before. Now it's our turn. And they give each other like a handshake. It's almost kind of like a moment that you would see like two, like the old action hero and the new action hero kind of like pass the baton.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I also thought it was interesting too, because I was expecting the like Navy divers to have some kind of moment. Oh, they do have a tiny one when towards the end when they're on the truck and the two guards go to the back to see what's happening, and they tackle them and knock them off the truck. But other than that, like I was expecting them to jump up at some point. What's the order of the? So they hijack the plane and ask it to go to Beirut, and then they fly to Algiers, and then they fly back to Beirut. Or do I have my timeline mixed up? That was very strange.
Because they let off some people the first time they were in Beirut and let on more terrorists. But then they went somewhere else and let off all the all the women. And then they went back to the first place and brought all the men out. And it's like, this is for planning.
Yeah. I feel like, again, it's like, so some of the like dramatic moments were directly lifted from real life. And I feel like some of the really cumbersome plot stuff were also like adhering too much to like real life. Like in real life, I think the TWA plane made like 5 different stops.
Yeah, but I would expect them to be kind of, I wouldn't expect them to leave a place to go. I don't know why they went to Algiers and then why they came back. They were just like the New World Revolution, and we want stuff. Like there was never
freedom fighters. At one point, they did have a press conference on a runway where the pilot was getting like continually banged in the head with the gun as the terrorists told him what to say out the window. So like the pilot would stick his head out the window and be like, "Okay, ask your questions one by one," and then if he didn't like what was happening, they would shoot at the reporters and hit the guy in the head with the gun. And at some point, I think it was in Algiers, but I'm not sure, Chuck Norris and his little baby buddy Pete are pretending to be tourists.
Canadian tourists.
Canadian
Right.
tourists to the point he puts a Canadian flag pin on his collar so that you will know that he is extra Canadian.
That's his entire disguise.
Walking around with a camera and like a bowl of poutine.
And then there was like a whole bunch of movie where like I just did not know what was happening. Like a solid half hour where I was like, where are we at? Who is where? What is who has what? How long has it been? I had no idea. But then after that, it's on.
Yeah.
As soon as we crest that hill,
let's load up the dune buggies.
And then the dune buggies just coast down the hill, and everything becomes as heightened and ridiculous as it could possibly want to be. Starting, and I think the first moment was when they're all sitting in a boat, and they're gonna like go through a pipe, and a light shines toward them, and they duck, even though their air tanks are neon yellow. They are the most visible thing in the whole world, but they're like, duck, expose more of your neon yellow tank. And then everything is just bananas after that.
Yeah, it was just, I cannot tell you what happened for like a good 10 minutes. It was just like flashing lights and motion.
And shooting.
I did notice when they went in as divers with that boat, they just, I mean, it's a plastic raft or whatever, but they still just like left it there. There's a lot of just like leaving expensive military equipment behind.
Yeah, especially the bazookas. Like there's a point where they two guys each shoot a bazooka, and then they high five each other and drop the bazookas and walk away.
Yeah.
Look, if there's anything that canon films have taught me is that ninjas are the best warriors that history has ever created, and that bazookas can be indoor weapons.
And there's absolutely nothing covert. If this is a commercial for the Delta Force, it's not about how covert they are, because they are overt. There is nothing
overt force.
There's nothing sneaky about them. There's one point where I think it's a terrorist who's like, we're asking someone a question. He's like, open your mouth. He puts the gun in his mouth. Where is this? Where is this?
Yeah,
where is this? And it's like, how do you want him to answer you? You just put the gun into his mouth.
Now I can't understand you because your mouth is full.
Yes. I don't know. I would tell you, but I have a gun in my mouth. And there's a part where Lee Marvin is like down on the ground, and Chuck Norris is like up in a balcony, and he's like, "What do we do now, Lee Marvin?" I don't know, Chuck Norris, but you better get down here. Oh, you want me to go in and use the stairs? I don't know. Whatever is the fastest, your choice, Chuck Norris. Should I jump? Again, up to you, Chuck Norris. Do what you're going to do. And then he just zip lines down with his bare hand.
Yeah.
Firing an Uzi.
Yeah. At what? At what at that point?
Yeah, it's something. No, the other one that I wrote down in my notes is he goes and kills the radio operator. And then the guy who's on the other end of the phone is like, I want to negotiate. And Chuck Norris, to show how tough guy he is, he doesn't negotiate with terrorists. He just shoots the radio. And I was like, well, fine. I mean, I get the point you're going for, but I'm not sure. But then, I don't know, 2 minutes later, another group of Delta Force guys comes through, and there's not even anybody at the radio, but he just sees a radio on a table and shoots it. This is our real enemy.
Yes.
Telecommunications.
Yeah, there must be some like PTSD about radios in a previous like mission. You just can't appreciate.
Oh, there's another part too where and it's like it feels like they're all doing their own stunts and they're just doing the best they can. Like when you see old westerns and you see the cowboys like hopping from horse to horse and you're just like, "Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I'm sure that was very, advanced maneuvers in 1939." And you could tell they're like just doing their best here to be like, "Well, what can Chuck Norris do?" Well, he can drive a motorcycle up to the plane where we'll have a rope dangling out, but like it's not that cool if he just drives up on his motorcycle and hops in the plane. We want the rope involved, but it's also not as cool if he just drives up and then grabs the rope. So we need him to stand up on the motorcycle, drive up no-handed to the plane, hop, grab the rope, and then rope climb himself into the plane.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed that he wasn't juggling 3 bowling pins while he did that too.
Or shooting an Uzi. Where's your Uzi?
Juggling 3 Uzis.
He could have like fired the backwards. I guess he depleted all of his ammo because before he got onto the plane, he had fired his backward facing bazookas from the motorcycle and blew up some people. But he could have used that to like launch into the plane.
He was stopped when he fired all of those, right?
Yeah, I feel like having like a bazooka on a motorcycle would really make driving a motorcycle difficult.
And dangerous.
Yeah. And yeah, if you shot one and not the other, would you like careen out of control?
Right. Do you have to like fire a forward mounted bazooka and a backward mounted bazooka just so that you don't like lose stability?
Because that last one, when he's like, he makes that quippy remark, comes out of the exhaust pipe of the motorcycle. Is that wrong?
I wonder. I don't think it was the exhaust pipe, but
yeah, it's faced in that direction. Yeah.
But then, like, so they get on the plane and they're high-fiving and handing out all the Budweisers. But the little buddy, his like little blonde buddy, like isn't gonna make it. And the cheesiest, worst acted part of the whole movie is like when he's like, "Is he gonna make it, Doc?" Head shake. And then the little guy's like, "As long as America wins." And then he like drifts off into death.
See, he gets it.
He gets it.
And then yeah, they're passing out Budweisers to everyone on the plane. It's like, don't worry, there's plenty more.
And they bring all the menfolk home and let them out of the plane, and the women are like, "Yay!" And then they just like sadly unload Pete, the guy who didn't make it. And then Chuck Norris, goes back to his horses?
Well, I think there's a sequel, so no.
Okay, cool. Yeah, this movie is upside down, backwards and forwards. The craziest thing I've ever seen.
It was a lot less fun than I was expecting it to be, but
yeah.
All of the fun is in the last half hour. Maybe the last 45 minutes. All the fun is there. So skip, like, just edit it out and like. But I think this is why we get these modern action movies, which are exactly like what we're asking for. Like in Top Gun, you don't know who the bad guy is. You don't care what their agenda is. They're bad. They have a bad thing. Let's go blow that shit up. High five, America. If you're gonna march George Kennedy and Shelley Winters into this plane, give them more to do than just like. I don't know. I'm still very disturbed by the whole, like, when she's protesting that they're taking her Holocaust survivor husband away for being a Jew, and she's like yelling at everyone on the plane, to like rise up. I'm like, ugh.
I wish the first half was better because I think it is the more interesting story, but it's very like made for TV movie and very like these are obviously the good guys and these are obviously the bad guys, which I think you could do completely without like exaggeration to tell that story. But they went for let's simplify this as much as possible as well.
Yeah, I feel like it's the same, thought process that you see in some of these other canon films, which is we're going to like go big, we're going to go over the top, but yet we're going to go emotional. We're going to go like it's almost like an Oscar, like, we're going to get this like the most extremes of all these directions because that's how he sees cinema. But there's this mental bridge that's missing that connects these different worlds that don't connect,
Well, because if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Yeah, it's like the biggest drama, the biggest action, but there's like no subtlety in anything missing.
So there are sequels to this. Have any of us seen any of them?
No.
Okay.
I have not. This was my first time seeing this movie as well. Although I have a strong memory of my younger brother was very much the action movie person in the house. So I'm almost 1,000% sure he rented it.
I think I've seen clips of it. Like I swear I've seen some of the more like over the top moments.
Probably the motorcycle rockets did look kind of familiar.
And the double bazooka high five.
Yeah.
Yes.
That seemed very familiar. I have to be honest, like other than Walker, Texas Ranger and a whole bunch of memes about how Chuck Norris is, I don't think I've ever seen his work. Was he ever young?
Yeah, he was young when he fought Bruce Lee, like in the 60s.
Okay.
Or was the 70s? The 70s.
Yeah, I had an elementary school friend who just idolized the movie The Octagon. Would like bring up Octagon trivia all the time. I don't know that he would have liked this one. I think this one deserves like a warning on the poster that Chuck Norris does no karate.
There was like a very low like back kick.
Yeah, he almost did a roundhouse kick, and I was like, oh, he's gonna karate. No, even when he was just wailing on Robert Forster for like 45 minutes at the end of the movie.
Yeah, we didn't get any karate.
He leapt through a window, which I don't consider necessarily karate specific, but
right.
Yeah.
There's like, and then later, like in the 90s, we get like Van Damme, we get like Steven Seagal, we get these movie personalities that are tied to martial arts, but they're not necessarily martial artists,
Right.
No.
But like Chuck Norris is a martial artist. Like he is a genuine full on martial artist, who kind of like transitioned into not doing a lot of martial arts. I think honestly it is because he's getting older, like
very well
like
maybe.
Yeah, like in 86 he's 46, and so it's probably just something that he's kind of like changing his brand towards because it's just tougher.
Yeah, I mean, I can't do it. That's for
I'm
sure.
Yeah, I hurt my back yesterday lifting boxes in the garage. So I can't imagine what it's like some of these people like in the Expendables, like probably all of them have shot knees,
Mm-hmm.
And you got to make an action movie around that,
Is Chuck Norris in the Expendables?
He is I think he's in the second one.
Okay. Okay, so speaking of all of that, this seems like a perfectly beautiful natural segue into deep cut recommendations, which is, of course, when you watch Delta Force, I have now screwed up my algorithm, and Amazon is now like, oh, we thought we really had a bead on you. But okay, we were wrong. All right, let me start serving you up. They're probably going to serve you up the Expendables. They're going to serve you up, stuff that you would definitely expect that to like if you like Delta Force. But what's an unexpected, like a more deep cut recommendation? And I'm not sure mine is that much of a deep cut, but I think so. So I would recommend The Towering Inferno, which is a 70s disaster movie, which is very slow at the beginning, very boring. There's a lot of talk about architecture, and then there's a building on fire.
Towering before you get the Inferno.
Exactly. But it's like one of my favorite, and I love 70s disaster movies. I love them. But this one has Paul Newman, so that's why I chose this one. And I think
that's great.
Some of the cast of this is actually in the Poseidon Adventure, so Poseidon Adventure as well, of course. But Amazon may actually recommend those things to me for this.
Yeah. My only knowledge of The Towering Inferno, there's a whole swath of like 70s and 80s movies that I only know from the Mad Magazine parody. And Towering Inferno and Altered States are the two that for some reason they reprinted a lot. I don't know why.
Hilarious.
I've read them many times.
I love The Towering Inferno. It's very boring though.
Nice.
Even when there's fire raging all around, there's still time for people to like have angry conversations. And like Fred Astaire is in it, and he's like a huckster who's like trying to grift people. I highly recommend it. Have you seen it, Nathan?
No, I haven't. Yeah, or maybe I've seen parts, but not all the way through.
Probably seen the part where Fred Astaire tap dances down the stairs.
Yeah, and they're on fire. And O.J. Simpson is in it.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Rick? Do you have a deep cut recommendation?
I have a recommendation that could not be more deep cut, I think, if I tried.
Excellent.
And it's another canon film. And I'm going to specifically recommend a specific version so it's a film series that had multiple sequels, but I specifically want to call out part 2. And the reason is it's the American Ninja series. There's another canon series. It's about... I've only seen the original once, so I don't really remember his origin story, but it's about this like white guy who's in the military and somehow as a kid was secretly trained as a ninja. And it was a huge part of my childhood. And I mentioned my brother, who was the big 80s action movie fan. These used to come on cable all the time. For some reason, part 2 came on way more than any of the others, at least during the 3-year period when we had cable.
Mm-hmm.
And we watched it over and over again. And it was very inspiring as like a 5th grade wannabe filmmaker, because I realized that like the ninjas always attacked in groups of 3. So they were probably the same 3 stuntmen just being cycled through over and over again.
Oh, no.
Kill these 3. And I remember thinking that was like the most brilliant, first of all, to be a kid and think like, when I grow up, I want to make movies. And then to even that young, just already be thinking like, what's the cheapest possible way to do this?
I like that.
Yeah, it was a favorite. It's a favorite movie of my brother and I. We quoted it all the time. Probably if I watched it again, like the politics would not hold up and it would be terrible on all kinds of levels. But if you watch it with that frame of mind, it's massively entertaining.
And that's what we wanted to do, that one for an episode, but we couldn't find it anywhere. It's like in the ether. So if someone can find it and send us a link, we'll have you back and we'll do it. Because it was on Amazon Prime. Right, Nathan? Didn't we almost do it?
That's Invasion USA.
Oh, that's right. Invasion USA.
Yeah.
That one's also Chuck Norris, and I'm
Yeah, that
almost sure
there
it's
literally is a bazooka duel indoors at the end of that movie.
That's fantastic.
Well, we'll have you back for that one, Rick.
Oh, that sounds great.
You're officially our Chuck Norris
Our
bazooka
most
guy.
elusive. We've tried to do Invasion USA twice. It's elusive. It appears and then it disappears,
It does.
Yeah.
I thought that was.
like the villain searching for Chuck
I
Norris
thought that was the
in
same
an office
movie.
complex with a bazooka.
I love it. And for you, Nathan.
So my recommendation is going to be like so if you're in the mood to see, I guess the almost the same kind of premise, which is terrorists have taken over an airplane and our good guys have got to kick ass, and this is 10 years later. My recommendation is Executive Decision with more Kurt Russell.
Oh, yes. I remember really enjoying that, but I remember nothing else.
It's gonna, if you're gonna get some of the same energy of like the whereas the villain, the actor playing the villain can act, but he can't fight. And then the hero, like in the Chuck Norris movies, he can fight, but he can't necessarily act. And so, you've got the same kind of situation, but this has a little more like Tom Clancy kind of vibe of like the all the toys and the political intrigue, but with just a few more. It's like it's got like John Leguizamo and it's got like Steven Seagal in it.
Ew.
Yeah. But like in a rare, like they must have duped, like spoiler alert, Steven Seagal actually dies in the movie. They must have tricked him because I just can't see like him. It must have been like a big sack of money because there's no way that ego, that guy can
Right.
can lose a fight or die.
Uh-huh.
But they really had to like trick him somehow.
He had a big bill come due that month, and so
Exactly. But yeah, if you want to see Delta Force, but with Kurt Russell,
I do.
then Executive Decision is the way to go.
Excellent.
A bonus recommendation, if you can track it down, find the Saturday Night Live episode hosted by Steven Seagal, especially if you hate sketch comedy.
Oh no! But I love sketch comedy.
Oh no!
He is so bad and does not understand jokes, and it's.
Oh boy!
So I have a fun fact.
Oh, please.
Is that this is so the last two? I don't know when this episode comes out, but the last two movies that we've covered, which are Predator and Flight of the Navigator, actually have something in common with this movie. This is the third movie that there's something in common. All three of them have something in common other than being like produced pretty shortly, within the same time frame.
Yeah, we did 3 in a row from the same year.
Yeah, but they all have the same composer.
Oh,
Alan Silvestri composed Predator and Flight of the Navigator, and also, by the way, apparently, he did Avengers Endgame as Infinity War as well.
I believe yes. I was thinking that his name sounded familiar, and I remember at the beginning thinking like, "Oh, this is really neat that they have this whole synth score in this movie." And by the end of it, I was just like, "It sounds like a workplace safety training video."
Yes, it does. Yes,
I think they got him to like do the score for like 5 minutes, and then they're like, "We'll just loop the music wherever
we're just going to loop it
is blowing up."
Yeah. Wow, thank you, fun fact Nathan. I think that's something we should add to every episode from now on. Fun facts with Nathan. Also, Nathan, I demand that we do something with lots of women in it next. Like, I need a Steel Magnolias, I need a 9 to 5, I need some girls, I need some feminine energy in our next choice movie.
Okay,
we're on a run, we are on a tear of like.
Well, let's see what else.
Part of that is the 1980s, though.
Okay, so
that's how we make our decisions, right? It's whatever. What else has Alan Silvestri?
Yeah,
Silvestri.
He did Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
This is a Silvestri Stan account now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there you go. It's not much more feminine energy than Jessica Rabbit, right?
Yeah, so crucial for women and their voice in the world. All right, so on a scale of one double bazooka high five, to 10 being the best amount of double bazooka high fives, how many double bazooka high fives do we give the Delta Force? And I will start with you, Rick, since this was your
Your fault.
Yeah, this is my fault. I'm gonna go right down the middle and say like 5.5. Like I think there's some historical stuff, and if you can kind of view the political stuff as a product of its time rather than an endorsement, then I think some of that is enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's kind of boring.
Yeah.
And incoherent. So yeah, 5.5.
Excellent. And for you, Nathan Blackwell.
Well, this hurt. I'm gonna have to give it like a 4.5. Like I was planning to give it like a 6, and then I had to keep dialing it down as I like. If they, if you watched a couple of choice moments, then I'd rate it higher. But just in terms of just like gut and like engagement level, there's plenty of fun stuff, but oh man, it's not the smoothest watch.
Yeah. I think that's fair scores from both of you. Now I'm gonna have to really undercut it, and I'm gonna give it a 2.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Now, if someone made, like I said, a 45-minute supercut of just the fun part of meeting the characters at the beginning, and the horse farm, and the Canadian tuxedo, as you said, Rick,
Yeah.
and then bazooks at the end, then I will give you all the points. I will quadruple my score. But you don't get to like separate the Jews and then have fun bazooks. Like, so no. And it was like real tough to watch when I was even a little bit sleepy. I was just like, oh man. And really trying to measure out my time, like, do I have time to watch this between things tomorrow? No, you don't, Krissy. Just bite down and get
through it. That's kind of how I watch it. And I think the perfect assessment of it is it either needed to be a lot better or a little bit worse. Like if it was a little bit worse, it would have been enjoyable on that level.
That's the perfect sum up of this. A lot better or a little bit worse. Yeah. I think you said it opposite, but yeah.
And that's where I feel Invasion USA falls.
It's going to come in
a little bit worse.
Yep. Oh my gosh. Well, so much fun. Thank you, Rick, for being our guest. We've been dying to have you on. Where can people find all of the wonderful things that you do?
So I'm R Larsen 4 on most, if not all, of the social media things. Some of my longer writing you can find on Medium. Some of shorter things on Twitter. And I post a lot of pictures of weird signs that I see on my Instagram.
I do love that.
Yeah, that and pictures of my kids. So
I do love that too.
Yeah.
Yay. Excellent. And Nathan, where can people go to support your creative endeavors?
Squishystudios.com is we've got a lot of short films, web series, stuff like that. You can check out the feature film project that we're working on, The Last Movie Ever Made, which is on the Facebooks and the Instagrams, if you want to kind of follow that.
I do want to follow that.
Well, great.
And I suggest you do too, people listening. You can find more about the podcast at Most Excellent Pod, and more about me at Most Excellent Krissy. And, please rate, review, star, thumbs up, tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell an international no, don't tell any international terrorists, we don't need them listening, but help spread the word.
We really can't help it whether they listen or
It's
not,
true.
can we?
Tell Chuck Norris, is he still alive?
Yes,
He is, but
Yes.
he may have shot his only radio.
Oh, that's true, so he can't listen to things.
Yeah.
He can't listen to things. But do please keep the most excellent podcast. Most excellent. Do keep the most excellent 80s movies podcast motto in mind. When you're out there in the world, please be excellent to each other. And
Party on,
dudes. Yay! And that's a wrap.
Nice.
Woohoo. Thanks so much